Hey, welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. We're glad you're tuning into this episode. We are a viewer and listener supported podcast, so we really appreciate you listening, watching on YouTube. We really encourage you to subscribe to whatever platform you're using. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, or if you're on Apple or however you listen to a podcast, be sure and subscribe. We'd greatly appreciate it. Also, make comments if you like it and share it if you like it. We really need people to make comments and share the episodes that you like. And then also, if you're not already a supporter, we really would encourage you to go to spiritualityadventures.com and you can pick a tier, and we have bonus content for every type of giver. This is a nonprofit, so they're tax-deductible donations, but we do provide bonus content for those who are supporters. So be a part of the team, help support Spirituality Adventures, and we're so glad you're tuning into this episode. All right, welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. Thanks for tuning into this episode, and I'm so excited to have Calvin Arsenia back on the podcast with Spirituality Adventures.
Thanks for having me.
So, history-wise, by the way, I want to tell everybody, if you're new to Calvin and you're in the Kansas City area, or if you're outside the Kansas City area, I just wanted you to know, Calvin just was voted just a few months ago for the 6th straight year in a row as what's the title?
Kansas City's Best Musician.
Kansas City's Best Musician by Pitch Magazine, which really is the voice for the musicians of Kansas City, wouldn't you say?
The arts and culture.
Yeah, the arts and culture crowd. So,
and it's the public votes on it. So, and they nominate, and I have never nominated or voted for myself. So, and I didn't ask anyone to vote for me either, which is the part that just kind of baffles me. It's like, wow, I know so many incredible musicians in this town. I certainly am not my favorite, but I'm honored to represent Kansas City this way.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's such an honor. So, and he's a harpist, but I've seen him play at least 6 other instruments. At least. I think I saw you play 6 on the opening of your Paradise album.
Oh, is that fun? That's funny. Yeah, guitar, ukulele, a harp, flute,
violin,
viola. Yeah.
Oh, viola. Yeah. Okay.
So that's 5.
And harp. Did you play harp? Yeah, somebody else played harp.
Yeah, but I did for the last couple songs.
Okay.
Because I just wanted to make sure that
it's almost
threw it in there.
Almost 6.
Yeah. I also play piano and banjo, and we can talk about that too.
Yeah. So, but my friend Tim Place, who's a cycling buddy and a rock climbing buddy, who also himself is a musician, he said, you got to get to know Calvin. Well, I sent Calvin a Instagram message, which is not the best way to get a hold of somebody who has, tens of thousands of Instagram followers.
Just 110.
Yeah. but anyway, I did, and he didn't respond. And then I sent another one, and then all of a sudden he responded. And then we did an interview, and it was a 2-part deal in April of 2021. And this was during the pandemic, mm-hmm. and Calvin was doing a podcast with his close friend that he grew up with called We Were Christian Kids. And it was a very snarky critique of Calvin's Christian upbringing.
Yeah.
All right. But it was so fun, and I laughed my way through most of those episodes, and then I was so excited to interview Calvin, and then I don't know, is this an overstatement to say we've become friends over these last few years? I'm so grateful for the friendship I've had with Calvin.
And 3 years now.
3 years, yeah. So, give us, for those who don't know you, Calvin, just give us a quick, your quick background story, where you grew up and your family, your faith origins, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I was born in Orlando, Florida. My parents are both from Central Virginia. I'm one of 3 boys, the middle child. We moved to Kansas City in the year 2000. I like to say that we survived Y2K and moved to Kansas City. So most of my formative years were in Olathe, Kansas. And in that time, I found myself well, I guess, I got saved a few times, but when around 13 years old, I borrowed a guitar from my friend. She got one for Christmas, and by February she had given up and told me that, said, Calvin, you're pretty musical, so you should learn how to play the guitar and then teach me. And so between February and June of that year, I learned how to play a few songs and was already leading worship 7 times a week.
Wow.
Volunteering as a 13-year-old.
At a church?
At churches and Bible studies, yeah. So there was a Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday morning. I was leading worship.
Wow. Wow. At 13, 14.
Yeah.
Gee.
Yeah. And leading Bible studies at church and whatnot, and got really involved, and looking back on it, it was definitely a way to protect myself from, well, it's funny, and I probably did say this in the We Were Christian Kids podcast, but in order to not feel like I had to respond to every altar call, because I felt so much shame for being different, and not just queer, but being an artist and being kind of just a little bit offbeat in my own way, that feeling shame for attractions or for thoughts that I would want to respond to every single altar call that I was in. But being the person who was playing the music for the altar call, I was already on the altar. So there was a bit of protection and safety for being, up on stage, but I also, got to see a lot of transformations happen, a lot of healing happen in the context of being vulnerable with a group of people, and I watched the Holy Spirit fall every time people said scary stuff and came clean about something. And then I got really involved in a prayer movement and spent a lot of time studying and meditating on scripture and praying and singing right out of the Bible spontaneously and making up melodies, and through making up melodies both in the church, to memorize Bible verses or just in prayer, I started writing my own songs and things that I wanted to say that didn't have a biblical context but were my story, and had my first solo show in 2009 at a Starbucks on 151st and Black Bob. And in that, when I was trying to, and then around the same time, I had discovered the work of Bjork, who is one of my musical heroes, and decided that I wanted to have a harpist play for me at these shows I was doing at coffee shops. And so I went around and I found and kind of, interviewed and introduced myself to different harpists in Kansas City, and wanted to see if any of them were interested in being a part of my band, which some of them were interested, but I had to provide them with music and time to learn the sheet music and to practice, and I didn't know how to write the music for them at the time. I do now, but I didn't then. So it was just easier and cheaper if I rented a harp for myself and learned how to play. And so at 20 years old, I touched a harp for the first time. 2 years later, I moved as a missionary to Edinburgh, Scotland, where I made it there for about 2 weeks before the itch to play harp was too great to overcome. So I rented a harp when I lived there, for when to eating to take lessons from the Scottish harpist, and played at open mic nights, and then moved back to Kansas City in 2014. And believed that my most authentic self was not one that was working in the church, but that I wanted to make the world a beautiful place outside of that context, and doing that through ceremonious concerts, pulling from my church background, but believing that my experience is just as holy as the people who were in the Bible, and that all of our stories are that important. And so I kind of got fatigued from playing in contexts that didn't value my story as much as I did, like espresso machine coffee shops and bars where people are just talking over you. I think that my story and everyone's story is more important than that. So I began presenting my work in really lots of pageantry and pomp and circumstance, and playing the harp and wearing flowers and scenting the room and making sure there's tasty things, and which is exactly what I was doing at 13 years old, at Bible studies, making sure that there was tasty things and nice smells and good music, and I'm a musician, but I think of myself more as somebody who is creating moments of transcendence to allow healing and vulnerability and beautiful life-changing moments that happen with in the context of music. And because it's something I've seen for my entire life, and I believe in it with or without historical texts involved.
Yeah. I remember you sharing about going to the Sigur Rós.
Sigur Rós, yeah. It was Jónsi, the lead singer of Sigur Rós, yeah.
And you felt you had such a spiritual experience.
Yeah. It's so funny.
And I think you described it as how did you describe it? Like you were having an affair or something. I can't remember how you described it.
That's not untrue. Because I had heard about Sigur Rós and my friends who had gone to see the actual full band. I think it's an 8-piece band that's Sigur Rós from Iceland. And I knew that the lead singer was a homosexual, and I also knew that that people who had gone to see Sigur Rós were having like these really intense experiences in those concerts. Now I have yet to see the whole band of Sigur Rós play together because when I came around, Jónsi was doing a solo project, and I just haven't yet seen them play together. But my friend who was in the worship band with me bought tickets to go see Jónsi at Liberty Hall in Lawrence, and he invited me, and so I didn't have to pay him back for the ticket because I also didn't have any money at the time. But yeah, he invited me and another friend to go to that concert, and I was skeptical and probably really like rigid when walking in, because I wanted to be like, I didn't want to experience anything that wasn't something that God wanted me to experience. And but what I felt was just like a deep sense of wonder and a lot of beauty in the music, and both outrageous joy and sorrow, throughout the set of music, and using the devices of storytelling and animations and the set design and the costumes. And I just thought, wow, this is like really beautiful and life-changing, and I want to be able to make art like this for other people too.
Yeah, I love that. So let's catch up, because the last time we did an interview with you, pandemic, you were doing We Are Christian Kids, you aren't able to get out, and like all the venues shut down, so catch us up on the last 3 years quickly, and then we want to dive into your new projects and what's going on right now.
Yeah, so we did We Were Christian Kids. We had 33 episodes in homage to how many years that Jesus was on the earth, I guess. And then because of the podcast and all the great feedback that we got from that, from people writing in from all over the world, I felt encouraged to write a book kind of about some of those same experiences, called Every Good Boy Does Fine. And that's available on Amazon, but go to your local bookstore and buy it from there.
Right, and it's not G-rated, by the way. So anyway,
certainly not. Definitely read the first page before you purchase the book. But at the same time, is life G-rated? I don't think so.
No, nor is even the Bible that we grew up with, right?
Yeah. So do proceed with caution, but the same amount of caution that you would with everything else.
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to show up authentically and write a book that I needed when I was younger, and which is just to tell the truth.
Yeah, I hear you.
I think so many things can be alleviated if we just shared our notes and the true ones.
I'm finishing up my rough draft on my memoir.
Yeah, amazing. It's pretty raw. I might not ever have a pastor job again, but anyway. No. I just think it's better to get it out of the beginning.
That's right.
Because you just have to change our expectations of people, right? And that we can show up and be beneficial and authentic without being quote unquote perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'd
say the title of that book again.
Yeah, Every Good Boy Does Fine.
Okay.
Which is the little lyrical device to remember the lines and the staff of the treble clef. And
I did take piano lessons for 2 years.
Okay.
I always wanted to be playing basketball, so I ended
and then I put out a new record last year in 2023 called Paradise, and that was a kind of 4 years in the making of songs that I've written throughout the pandemic, and I just really I kind of felt like the world was moving on in a certain way or whatever. So those songs really do speak of the time that we were living in, and I wanted to make sure that people who have been following me for years and it was just kind of a check-in. Like didn't have aspirations of that record being something that was nationally recognized or internationally recognized as Cantaloupe was, and I released it independently. But for the people who are big fans of mine and wanted to like stay in touch, I just wanted to kind of touch base with this. This is my new music, and this is where I'm at right now. And more of a progress report or a check-in than trying to like bust through some markets or something. But yeah, that happened at the Emerald in Kansas City in June of last year, and it was a really beautiful experience. Got to play with the senses. We had an ice cream, a custom ice cream that was made for the show.
Yeah, what's the name of it? Titties?
Sugar Tits.
I remember thinking, oh baby,
Sugar Tits with glittery.
I want some of that.
Yeah, glitter, and I think it was all vegan too, maybe.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so
I met the gal who runs that.
Camry Ivory. Well, she only does it for me.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, she makes her own ice cream, but she does not do that publicly, like for other people.
Interesting.
And so really grateful for her. And then there was, had like an 18-piece ensemble. We had the choir from Jeune Soundwaves, and they were beautiful. Kadesh Flo, my friend who goes by the name Chiri. She recently moved to Liverpool, but she was on that record and kind of cast in. We projected her face and piped in her voice for one of the songs, which was really, really cool. Kind of also paying homage to like Zoom culture and like our screens and whatnot. I wanted her voice and her, because she wrote the part of the song. So anyway, there was a lot of cool things that I got to accomplish through that concert that I had always wanted to like do. And actually the film, having her projected into the space, I actually got inspired because I was on a plane.
Was she live projected?
No,
it was recorded.
Pre-recorded. Yeah. But I got that.
I remember thinking, I think this is recorded. I was there,
Yeah. No, I was really inspired by. I was on a plane and I watched the recording of Mariah Carey live in Tokyo, and she had the song called One Sweet Day with Boyz II Men, and they had pre-recorded their part, and she sang live over their pre-recorded part, and it's like on the screen. So I was like, hey, I can do that with Chiri. So so that was kind of the inspiration. And what else? I think that's maybe the highlights.
Yeah, and so the newest thing that you're doing, we're going to dive into that now.
Yeah.
Greenwood Social Hall.
Yes.
So talk about how that came about.
Yeah.
And then give us a little bit of the history of Greenwood, its
origins.
Origin story, and then as well, what do you want to do with it?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So, so this is the newest project.
Yeah.
In Calvin Arsenia's world.
Yes.
Right? Greenwood Social Hall.
Yes, which is like not too far from what I was already doing, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So in November, I don't remember the specific date, but in November, my friend Peregrine. 2023? Yes, 2023.
So hot off the press. 2 months ago.
Well, 3
months ago.
Yeah. Peregrine Honig, who's been a dear friend of mine for many years, we've collaborated primarily over the West 18th Street Fashion Show. And she was the creative director and director for that, for the fashion show, which is in its 22nd year now. And I was the musical director and have been the musical director now for the last 4 or 5 years. Gosh, losing track. So she messaged me or called me one morning as I was getting ready to leave Denver. I was out there for a week of shows with Quixotic, and on the Sunday morning heading back to Kansas City. And she called me. I didn't answer because it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. And I have a rule that I don't answer the phone until I brush my teeth. I get to have my day first. Yeah, so I didn't answer the phone, but then she texted me. She said, call me when you get a chance. And so then she called me again, but I was pumping gas, so I was out of the house and almost on the road. And I said, hey, how's it going? Are you okay? And she said, yeah, I wanted, this is weird or, just curious if you'd be interested, but I'm deciding to move out of Greenwood. And I wanted to know if you would like to take the space. And I was just really gobsmacked by the proposition because I've always wanted to be in a church building since I was very young, and even over the past few years, kind of looking to purchase a home and thinking about what kind of purchase that would look like, owning a space or a venue and a spiritual place has been something that I've wanted to have for a long time. And so I believe that music sounds best in churches, and because they're made to house music and moments of transcendence, and so I was already shopping for stuff in St. Joe, Missouri, or like kind of in the middle of nowhere in Colorado, and looking around, on Zillow, for churches, and so I was definitely not in a position where I was looking to move. But here's the thing: so she found a house. She was looking for a house for a friend of hers, and then discovered a house that she wanted to live in herself. And this is the first house-shaped house she's been in since 1996. And so there's a lot of comfort in having a house-shaped house for her, and I couldn't imagine Greenwood being in anyone else's hands. When people have asked me, as I've been on the road over the years touring, both in Europe and around the United States, they ask me, what's your favorite place to play in Kansas City? And I always tell them Greenwood Social Hall. And so
interesting.
So when she asked me, it was like a tuning fork, getting hit. It's kind of intense vibrations. But I said, let me think about it. let me think about it. And so I called her the next day, and first on the journey back to Kansas City from Denver, the drive, I called my mom, and I called my best friend, and I called my partner, and called some other people, and was like, hey, what do you think about this? And everyone said it might be tough, but you're the person. And so I said yes to Peregrine, and the lease began December 1st. So we had 3 weeks to put that together and to make that happen. And so that's kind of how that happened. Greenwood Social Hall was the Greenwood Baptist Church. And about 10 years ago, which
was a historically black Baptist church, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. It started, when was it founded? Do you know?
So the congregation moved around a lot. The building was built in 1927.
Okay.
But the congregation, I think, started in the late 1800s, actually.
Oh, wow.
And they moved around to lots of buildings and really had struggled. I mean, there was a fire, and they had a tent, and then the tent got blown over, and I have a whole history of the journey to the building. But they've mostly been in the West Side in the same neighborhood. And then about 10 years ago, they decided to move out because the congregation was aging, and they were having a hard time getting up the stairs.
It's got a set of steep concrete stairs up to the entry.
Yes.
I'm talking probably 20 feet of stairs.
Yeah.
Pretty steep.
Yeah.
Not built to code today.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, right. So, yeah.
So it's tough. But yeah. So they moved out about 10 years ago. The space was purchased by a local investor and the contractor team, and they renovated the space, and Peregrine was a part of some of the design decisions in the space, and so it's primed and ready to be a venue, and it is my home. We've moved into the space, as of like last week. So we're still moving in. But yeah, it is both my and my partner's home, but also a space that we want to have to offer to the community to gather around healing and storytelling and moments of transcendence and fun and joy and just doing life with people, but definitely music being the primary focus.
Okay. So let me think here where to go with this. So the vision for what you want to do with the place is what you just described.
Yeah.
Okay, but you gave like 3-4 words right there. You kind of break those down a little bit.
Well, yeah.
So you said
community.
Community.
So I'm looking to, like, for instance, we have the book.
Give me like a paragraph on what you mean by community, what you mean by those 3 key things, 3 or 4 things that you just said.
Okay. So community, I want to help build community at Greenwood, meaning like we have a book club where we'll be reading a book a month together as a group and coming back to discuss it. I want to have dinners there. I want to have, we have dance, a monthly tango class that comes and meets there. I would like to see little miniature festivals like a DIY film festival or poetry reading. Or
we've interviewed some film festival folks.
Cool. Yeah. And to provide a safe haven for creativity and for truth-telling and for people who might not have another avenue into sharing their story or their work. I want to be able to provide a space for gathering a small group of people. The capacity that I want to keep it around is about 50 people in there. We could have more, but I'm sure the congregation had more, but I just feel like 50 is a good number, you know? Mm-hmm. And so yeah, having group conversations about maybe controversial things or just like, de-escalating the controversy around people's experiences and giving them a place to feel safe and to be held and loved, and so building the community through coordinating these gatherings that are intentional to discuss and to talk and to connect. And I'm also hoping, and I will be having concerts there. The calendar's already getting kind of filled up, and which is exciting. I have been able to play in lots of venues in Kansas City and all over, mainland of the United States and Alaska, and Scotland and parts of Europe and Mexico. But here's the thing. I think that by the time that an audience gets to a venue, they have had to take off time from something else. Sometimes they have to get a babysitter. They find an outfit. They purchased an outfit. They get the makeup. They showered, dressed, ready, bought the ticket. There's a lot of sacrifices that it takes for a human to get into a space where they're listening to music. And I have so often seen audiences, based on the context of the venue itself, really miss all the preparation work that the artist has put into the moment because the situation isn't right. Either the bar is the main priority for the venue, trying to make alcohol sales work so that they can actually pay the artist, which that's a model, sure, but typically I have seen so many artists who have put in years of dedication to their craft, who have written songs about their experiences, who are being vulnerable, which is scary by itself, who have got the outfits, who did the promo photos, who did all the things, the gear, and all the work, and lifting all the heavy machinery and all of the things, to get into the space. And yet both parties, both audience and the artist, is unsatisfied with the outcome. Because the artists have not been listened to, and the audience has a hard time listening because of the situation, right? So, So my dream when it comes to concerts is to have an hour-long concert, or maybe 2, but have a shorter, dedicated, silent, or very heavily engaged sets of music that require full attention from the audience. To not have a bar or liquor or anything like that as the main priority for the gathering, which happens in certain venues, but is not what's happening at Greenwood. So to have a focused listening time for the audience to really engage in the work of the artist, and for the artist to really have an audience who's there to listen to them. And I don't think that's a hard equation. That just makes a lot of sense. And when it comes to things like, the bathroom, I just want the bathroom to always be clean because I hate going to shows where the bathroom is gross, or like, or thinking about ways in which that the artist's story, if they tell me that they have a favorite smell or like a flower that they mentioned in their songs, or that I'll go and get a bouquet that speaks to their work, or if they have a favorite drink, or whatever, like I want to coordinate a taste that is something that is remarking their story and where they come from, or that reminds them of home. So when I'm working with these artists, I ask them, what smell, taste, feeling reminds you of home, and then I go and get that thing, because I want the audience to leave having fallen in love with a new artist, or fallen deeper in love with somebody that they've already been familiar with, and for the audience to really fall in love with playing and sharing of themselves as well, because I believe that when we connect on our most human level, like that we leave better people, and more empathetic, more resilient, and that music has always changed the world.
Yeah. I'm 100% behind you. I can't sing very well, and I don't play anything, but I believe that 100%. And I've spent most of my life hanging out with musicians. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah. Like I married one, and so like I went to the concert that you and Ezgi put on just for the audience and she's from Turkey. And so I got to hear a little bit of her story, and actually I've interviewed dozens of indie musicians from Kansas City, and there's still more. I'm going to get a list from you before you leave today, so that I have a new hit list. But at any rate, but no, I love to dive into their whole story and their background, their history, family, spirituality, all those things. But then allow their music to kind of burst out of that whole thing. That's fun for me. Yeah. And I love to see how their music and their passion ties into their whole life story kind of thing. That's just, I don't know. For sure. I love that. Yeah. So, but it was fun because after the Ezgi concert with you, she had her beverages from, there was a milk beverage, I forgot the name of it.
Salap.
Salap from Turkey. It's a milk.
Yeah, it's a creamy, warm drink that's like a similar consistency to probably like hot chocolate, but she said that it's made out of like a flour, and that's something that reminds her of home. And so, and then she spiced it with cinnamon. So it was like kind of like a warm, maybe eggnoggy kind of consistency, but not egg based. It's milk based. And
she's back there.
On the
swirling the stove and dips it and hands me a glass. And I'm like, this is amazing.
Right, like what else do you want in life? Like you want to get to know the artist like that well and that thoroughly, and like have a real exchange that will change you for the rest of your life. I mean, like people will be talking about that concert forever, and that's what I want. And like, sometimes, especially when you're coming to a new artist, this is my experience at least. Well, no, this is actually science. People enjoy music that they've heard before more than they enjoy listening to new music. That is scientifically proven.
Yeah, I know that.
And so,
but I still love new music.
I know.
I'm unusual, probably.
Well, but it's a discovery thing, right? But when they put up the scanners on your brain, you respond to things that are familiar more than you do, of course, things that are brand new. Yeah. And so there's something. So I'm trying to build at least some emotional checkpoints, which come through, we have our sense memory with smell is very intense. Memories can be conjured with smell very quickly, and they can also be conjured with music.
Emotions, like videos that go off in your brain about context,
And so when I'm involving food, sound, music, which is why I do the covers that I do, is because I'm looking to ingrain my work into the fabric of a person's like life, so that when they come to my shows and they smell the same incense that I had 10 years ago, that they're like, whoa, I remember that smell, you know, or like when you taste that salap again, you remember Ezgi. When you you know, there's it's more than just you're coming like just for a one night experience. Like I want to build in for my audience is something that is as effective as my time in the church was, because there are archaic methods that I believe that the church has found, you know, and not that they're exclusive to the church, but like things like the incense at the altar, or the candles around the room, or some of the liturgical work. You know, like these things are effective to the human experience because we respond to story, and we respond to sharing, we respond to fire, and we respond to the taste of wine, and to bread, and to eating together, and to communing in this way. And so those things are, I feel like they should not be held hostage by church experiences.
By one institution, one community.
And in America, it seems like it might be, or it might have been. But I want to just push back a little bit on both of those communities, both the concert kind of experience that we're seeing by, you know, major heavy hitters like Ticketmaster and Mammoth and blah blah blah, all those people. Like there's a certain context in which, you know, most of those shows are alcohol based. Like their whole business model is based on selling booze, and that's the only way that they can make money. That's how they get the sponsors and blah blah blah. Like that's the only way that they can pay the artist properly is through the bar. And so, even though Greenwood is a tiny thing and it's my home and it's, you know, basically a house concert series, I'm just trying to, with my work and with my life and how I'm dedicating myself to this project, to challenge what human connection can look like and what the arts are for, and how they can change us for the better to develop a more empathetic and understanding and patient society.
I love that. So, talk a little bit about the kind of musicians that you're hoping to roll through Greenwood, you know, and highlight and that kind of thing.
I definitely have vested interest in bringing people from all around the world to Greenwood, so that Kansas City is getting other opinions and views and experiences, but also I would like to showcase and platform people who are local, who tend to be not local. I hate the word local. I think a better word is people who live here, because nobody's local and everyone's international. But the people who live in Kansas City and who are part of the fabric of this town, who are typically playing in venues where people are talking over them. I want to find those people. And let them have a concert where people are actually listening and paying attention, because they're fantastic musicians. And kind of back to the point where we started this interview, you know, I've been voted Kansas City's best musician 6 years in a row, not because I'm the best musician, but because I fight for the context in which my music is heard.
Say that again.
I am Kansas City's voted 6 years in a row best musician, not because I'm the best musician, but because I fight for the context in which my music is heard. I make sure that the context, the venue, the setting is beautiful and precious, and that I show up authentically. But I make mistakes all the time, and I really should be practicing more. And like, I'm not as accomplished as a musician as hundreds of people who live in this town. When it comes to just being a musician, right? Like, there are hundreds who are more skilled at that job than I am. But I fight for my audience's experience. I fight for my musicians' experience, the people who play with me. And I want to make sure that the context is fun for the musicians, not too burdensome, not too scary, so I arrange my music for them in ways that they can just jump in and have a great time. And I also make sure that the experience for my audience is using anticipation when it comes to like how I advertise things, that there's ways for them to get involved with their attire. I think about things like they're going to eat or smell or taste or feel, things with their hands, how they engage with the space kinetically with their bodies, and then I always think about my favorite moment of a show is right after the last note before they start to applaud, and I think about what is that moment like, what is going to get them out of their seat for a standing ovation, and then I think about what are they going to text or call, or like the first interaction that they have after the show. Who are they going to talk to, and what are they going to say? And it's those two moments that I'm fighting for. Is what is the message they leave with? How do they explain what happened? What is the story that they tell with this experience? And what is the feeling that they have when I'm finished with the music or with the experience? And everything built up to those moments. And so
and you love to describe those moments as transcendent, right?
Yeah, because you feel like you are all of one accord, like everyone in the room is together, and we've all experienced this thing together, and like we're all witnesses of this moment together. And there are so many things besides just having a sound system in a room with lights on that make that moment something that is life-changing.
I love that. I think another thing that my observation of you is that you have a very generous heart towards other musicians. I think about I remember I pastored in Kansas City, and I would bump into other pastors who always saw other pastors as their competitors. Yeah. And it was this weird, like they didn't want somebody else to succeed, or they didn't want somebody else to get the limelight, and I always pushed back against that. I thought, I love all these pastors. It's not an easy thing to be a pastor. Yeah. It's not an easy thing to build a congregation or to pastor a community of people, because people are like me and they're a little, dysfunctional. And so they can be challenging to care, pastor, love, just like having a family and kids and all that stuff. There's always challenges to just our core family community existence, right? But you're for people. Yeah. You invest in other musicians other than yourself, and I've seen that, watched that. And I think that generosity of spirit is a huge part, and you care about these other musicians and their stories, and of course, and you know how good they are. Yeah. That's what blows me away. Is like how many good musicians and singer-songwriters there are in this city who nobody, it's not a huge crowd of people that even know about it.
And a lot of that's because of context. I mean, in my opinion, in my experience, like sometimes people don't know how, gosh, how do I put this? I guess I've been on stages that are, $1 million stages. And I've seen very mediocre art happen on those stages that have great lights and great production, but the actual musician doesn't bring much musicality, but maybe they have some attitude, they got the spunk, they got a good team behind them, and people love that stuff. They love it. And so I guess my argument or my theory is that if people who are that everyone's story is important, and that we don't have truth, we don't have full ultimate big capital T truth until we've heard everyone's story. So that's an impossible infinite mission. Right. But until everyone's story is heard and understood, we don't have truth. Period. And so I believe that people who are willing to go through the work to build their songs or their set list, and they want to share their story, that they should have the chance to do so, and that it should be not lesser than somebody else's just because of or whatever reason. If they're willing to be authentic and show up, then we have something to learn from them. And I'm front row with my pencil ready.
Yeah, I love that. I love that about you, and I think the other musicians, they love that about
they're my teachers, they're my heroes. Right. These are like my best friends. They're my counselors. They're my therapists. Like, they're my drinking buddy. Like, these are my people. Yeah. And yeah.
So I think that's awesome. I love that. So we've dialogued a little bit, and I don't know how, we really haven't gone down this road very far together, right? But we've dialogued about a potential nonprofit side to what you're doing with Greenwood Social Hall.
Yes.
And we're kind of just on the front end of that, but what are your thoughts right now about what you might want to do in the nonprofit world maybe connected to Greenwood Social Hall.
Yeah. Well, in bringing about both non-local and people who are part of the fabric already of Kansas City, I think that there's a lot of work that can be done to both enhance the artist's experience and also the audience's access to the artists. So I would like to be able to help put, fund and make it possible for the artists who play at Greenwood to visit schools in the area, to host showcases or kind of maybe more question and answer, something that's a little bit more like feet on the ground in the community. That could also be playing at senior living centers. That could be going to elementary schools or high schools. That could be, playing outside of the context of Greenwood itself. So that there was a separate gig or a separate community kind of touch point that's happening with the artists who come through Greenwood. And then also being able to put on kind of more elaborate experiences and having them at a lower cost for audiences to come in and engage with that. And that could look like student nights, or it could look like kid shows, or it could look like, putting on an all-black orchestra and everyone in the orchestra is getting paid properly, but it's not going as something that's falling on as a burden to the audience, so that more people can have access to that. So, but primarily through the lens of storytelling and making sure that that people get to hear the stories of these great artists and that the audience gets to engage with that as well.
Mm. So, as I think about, music's healing, right? I mean, there's healing components. I mean, it's a lot of things. It's not just that.
Yeah.
But music, music can be protest music too. I mean, it can be so many things.
Yeah.
It runs the gamut of the human experience, right?
Yeah.
Music does, but then the vision is for musicians to carry their music into places where it wouldn't go normally, to help enhance the human experience of transcendence, community, healing, connection, storytelling, these kinds of things. So expanding the reach of the musicians into a world just beyond an event.
Yes.
To build community, storytelling, transcendence, healing, and maybe stir some things up too. Yeah,
I mean, I think that there's nothing more. There's nothing more. What do they say? Like, the truth is like the most. There's something a phrase about fiction that the truth is like more fantastic or more beautiful and more profound than fiction can ever be. And there are certain things like that would be cost prohibitive to bring in, like an all-black orchestra, for instance, right? So I would love to make sure that they're paid properly and that they're put up properly, and that their humanity is respected in that process. It costs a lot of money to be alive, and I want to make sure that I'm supporting people in the best way I can.
I love that. So you've tossed around a few ideas about some names for this nonprofit work.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about any of that right now?
Well, so a few years ago, I was working with a Parisian harpist who actually came from Austria. Her background was her name is Sabina James, and her background is in the circus arts. So she was a juggler and kind of did some circus arts. And she kind of fell in love with the harp at a later age in life. Most people who play the harp start at like around 8 or 9 years old. But she was an adult and just as much in a similar way that I was an adult when I started playing the harp. And so we met online and started like meeting up, and I would go to Paris a couple times a year, and we play together.
Paris, France, not Paris, Missouri,
yeah,
right?
Paris, France, yes.
There is a Paris, Missouri.
Is there? I didn't know. I knew about the Texas one, but I didn't know,
about every famous city in the world, there's one in Missouri named
really
after
funny.
that.
Yeah, people came here and thought they'd never see home again, and they're like, let's just call this that. So funny. But she's from Austria, so we decided to put on the first Outlier Harpist Festival in Austria, in Güssing, Austria.
Outlier.
Outlier, yes. Outlyre.
Yeah.
And so being like lyre as a harp, and an outlier being the people who feel like they don't fit the mold, right? And I think too, to some degree, every person has felt like they were an outlier at some point. Now there are statistical things that also play factors into that too, but I think at our common core that we have all felt like we were on the outskirts of something. And so in that way, to be an outlier is a very inclusive idea, right? But what I want to do,
it's like misfit in some way or another,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
But maybe it doesn't have to necessarily have the negative connotation.
Negative connotation, right? Yeah.
Because there's some study on outliers. Like if there's a book,
Malcolm Gladwell's book, or is that the one you're talking about?
I think so.
It's
a pretty
actually
famous,
called Outlier.
Where they're studying, or the premise. I haven't read it, but I think that the premise was. Have you read it?
Yeah.
Well, then why don't you?
Well, I think that the idea is that sometimes some of your best ideas come from outside the mainstream idea world, and I think that that if I did it really quick, that would be
yeah. And I've seen also people talk about studying not the trend, but the people who are on the outskirts of that. So
he breaks it down. Malcolm Gladwell's really good about breaking down things that might be a little bit intuitive, but then he'll try to break it down into its components, right? And makes it really fascinating.
Yeah.
He had another one called Blink, and that was about thin slicing, what they call thin slicing, where sometimes your intuition can be more accurate in analyzing a situation than all of the analytic factors that could possibly go into it, and you can make a better decision through intuitive thin slicing. But he breaks all of that down and makes it really. And so he did the same thing with Outliers, and he's done the same thing with Blink. And most of his books kind of fall along those lines, where he's grabbing a hold of some kind of piece of intuition that all humans experience, but then he breaks it down. I don't know. He makes it very interesting. Yeah. So
in that
Jewish guy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Wow. So in that same kind of vein, we wanted to, with the first Harpist Festival, which is different than a harp festival, we wanted to celebrate the people behind the harp and the people who might not have come to this instrument through the traditional means, which typically means that people either come up with some like great inheritance or the family has wealth, because harps are very expensive. And so really wanting to kind of create a space for people who come to the instrument from a non-traditional path, to champion them, because people like me, I'm never going to play Ravel, Debussy, Mozart. I don't really have the facilities or the time to study enough to get my hands in a place where I have those things memorized now. So that's just not my trajectory. But the people who go and compete in harp festivals are people who do orchestral music, and that's their whole life. They've dedicated themselves to that. But being a harpist who doesn't do those things, sometimes we feel like we are on the outskirts of the harp community and that we don't really belong. And so we decided to come up with the Outlier Harpist Festival, where we celebrated the people behind the harp and not the harp itself. And we are doing that at Greenwood this year in April. And so Outlier has been a name that I've used as a part of my, I
Google searched it, by the way.
Utlyre, yeah.
So we need to... Yeah.
Yes. So Outlier is the name that I have been using historically now for many years. Okay. And how I want, and my time at Greenwood is probably not a permanent thing, right? It's what I'm doing now. But I wanted to have the nonprofit side be something that I could take with me outside of Greenwood. And because I don't own the building, and I'm just one person, right? So somebody else might be there eventually. But I just want to think practically, to not name a nonprofit that I'm in charge of after the building itself, but after the community that I'm building globally.
Excellent. So we're about out of time. But, one of the things I was thinking as you were sharing is that I know that we've been tracking together for the last 3 years, and there was a moment where you were thinking, I need to get to a bigger city, right? Because it's hard to break out from Kansas City, right?
Yes.
If you wanted to break nationally, Kansas City's a tough town to do it from.
You're not going to.
So yeah,
You're not going
to. There was that moment where you were thinking, maybe I need to go to Atlanta, maybe I need to go to New York, maybe I need to go to San Francisco. But you process, and that might still happen, right? But for the moment at least, you decided to kind of lock into Kansas City, and I mean you've been a part of this now 6 years. You've been voted pitch, but you grew up here, right? You've been a part of the fabric of this community a long time. So share a little bit about your heart for Kansas City. And let's close with those thoughts.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, Kansas City has a lot of disadvantages.
Let's just be frank. Right?
I mean,
unless you're Mahomes, Kelsey, and Taylor Swift these days.
Right.
Anyway, but,
well, they have enough money to get out.
Exactly right.
No, I mean, and for something that is actually insurmountable is the location of Kansas City. It is 8 hours drive to the next metropolitan besides St. Louis place, and
Chicago probably.
Denver, and Nashville, which is I think 12 hours away. So when it comes to touring and financially speaking, energetically speaking, it's hard to do a show after 4 hours drive. So when it comes to touring, you have Boston, New York, Philadelphia. All these cities are a couple hours away from each other. It's really easy to go to a new market where you can sell enough tickets on the East Coast. On the West Coast, I just got back from a tour of Santa Cruz, San Francisco, Healdsburg, and played in different markets down there. And you can get
How many did you play, by the way?
I played 5 shows.
In basically, in a week, yeah.
And so there, when it comes to being able to make a tour viable, the cost, the profit has to outweigh the cost, and there's a lot of cost and time that it takes to get to Kansas City. But the community of people that live here are beautiful and listening and value the arts and value story and are curious and really want the artists and the people who they see on stage and dance and in theater, and they want to see them succeed. They're not skeptical. They're open and wide open and want to celebrate people for sharing their stories. Maybe to a large degree because we are in the Bible Belt and people are afraid to tell their stories. And watching it happen on stage, it gives people the permission to be a more authentic version of themselves as well. And so we are ripe and prime, whereas places on the coast, like they see this stuff all the time. They really take for granted the art that they have in those communities. And I think that, in places like LA, the life is so hard to kind of get through, the traffic or the cost of living and all these things. People are working so many jobs. I think we have a really, really special kind of mix of people who are here who have a little bit more time and wiggle room to invest in experiences and who are emotionally in a place where they're ready to receive the stories of people. So the audiences here are incredible. The artists who choose to be here are here because they love the community and they love being collaborative as opposed to competitive, which again, other markets are way more competitive and scary and cliquey and so what I would like to do with Greenwood is to show the international stage, the international artist community that it's worth it to come here. That we will make it worth it for you both financially and spiritually, that you will love being cherished by the audiences in Kansas City. And that's been my experience, and I think that it can be other people's experience as well.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I felt like my whole, when I felt called to come back to Kansas City in 1990 to start a church, I honestly didn't think when I left here I'd come back. I really didn't. But now it's part of who I am, the city, and so there's so many things to discover here, and I've been here most of my whole life, and I still feel like I'm I'm learning and discovering things about Kansas City that I love, and the people, and there is a Midwest vibe.
Yeah.
That is, it's not fake syrupy Southern hospitality. I don't. My mom's from Savannah, Georgia, so I don't mean that as a. But there can, I went to school in Texas, and there can be a what I call a syrupy kind hospitality. Midwest is a little more real than, a little more authentic than that, but still has this. It's similar. Even when I went to Chicago, like in terms of big cities, Chicago had that kind of Midwest feel. Some really friendly, genuinely friendly people, but doesn't have the same vibe as the East Coast big towns. Doesn't have the same vibe as the West Coast big cities. Certainly doesn't have the same vibe as the South big cities. No. It's a unique. The Midwest is a bit of a unique culture.
We're the heart of America.
Yeah. My friend Rod Colburn, who you've met, who lives in Manhattan, he calls us flyover country, but I'm going to change his mind on that. See, so
and I will help you do it.
All right, I'll send this interview to Rod just to get him to listen to it. So
please do.
Yeah. But well, thanks, Calvin, for being on Spirituality Adventures. Thanks everybody for tuning in to this episode. Check out. And let's just do the whole, how do you find Calvin? How do you find Greenwood? Yeah. Give us all the ways to connect.
Yeah, I think Instagram and Facebook are the best ways right now. Calvin Arsenia, Calvin like the underwear, and Arsenia like arsenic, but with an A instead of a C. And then I also have a website, calvinarsenia.com, and Greenwood Social Hall is on all social media as Greenwood Social Hall.
All right. So check those out, social media, websites, and if you're in Kansas City, show up.
Yeah, come to the venue.
Check it out. When's your next event? What's up?
The next one is the Valentine's concert. So I will be playing for the first time, doing a full concert at Greenwood since I've taken it over, and it will be a lovely time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I didn't grow up liturgical, but that's Ash Wednesday.
Yes, it is.
For all of our Catholic and liturgical friends.
Yes.
So yeah, what time is that starting?
7:00.
7. Okay. Interesting. I might have to swing in there. Yeah. So, all right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Hey, you made it to the end. Thanks for listening all the way through on this episode. By the way, if you're not already a supporter, go to spiritualityadventures.com, sign up for one of our monthly supports, and you will receive our bonus content. You'll receive lots of interesting information about our guests. Many of our musicians will do special bonus songs and record a song. So I want to encourage you to do that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Be sure and subscribe. Be sure and share any of the episodes that you like. And be sure and make comments if you like them as well. This helps us get Spirituality Adventures out there to more listeners, more watchers. So whatever platform you're using, subscribe, like, share, make comments, and go to our website, sign up for our team, and be a part of the team support. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.